one team is quietly deploying multi-millions into self-storage using proprietary algorithms to identify supply and demand imbalances. Nobody else is. Drew, you built DXD Capital into an asset management business exclusively focused on self-storage development. You're using data science and algorithmic site selection to find the best opportunities that the big guys in the field are completely missing. Drew, welcome to the ring. Let's start with the first question. Let's be contrarian. Why self-storage?
And my background, 25 years in commercial real estate, I have developed and invested in office, multifamily, senior living, industrial. So, I do have a good broad background. The reason I love self-storage is because the location matters. If you nail the location, doesn't matter, like within reason, who operates it. Because the operations are simple, the product's a commodity. You've got to nail the location. And that's where a lot of data works really well for our business to sort that out. I would say the other thing that from a macro perspective that we love about storage is that young generations, millennials, now 19% of millennials have storage. When Gen Z gets 10 years older, it'll be in the 20s. Baby boomers only use 5% of baby boomers use storage. So there's these macro trends of younger people using it more and more, and that will just push the industry to new highs.
That's a very interesting stat that you just throw here in the table. But everyone's speaking about sexy deals, luxury condos, data centers, life sciences, but you building climate control boxes for the people. What is the most important part where investors misunderstand about this asset class?
I mean, in general, I think that investing with a developer that's done it many times is valuable because I've seen so many great people, sponsors with great ideas that all make sense, but they haven't done it. And there's just a value to doing something, to making the mistakes. And I always say it, like, we learn more by making mistakes than we ever do by getting things right. And you want somebody that's already made those mistakes and aren't going to make those mistakes for the first time. And so there is no good idea. Good ideas are generally no substitute for somebody that has experience.
That's a great answer. Mistakes, learning, iterate, and get better on the due diligence process. Let's jump a little bit more, Drew, into the market outlook. So a white space there. You're seeing the entire U.S. landscape. What's up for the next 24 to 36 months, and what macro shift should investors be tracking that can create or destroy demand here in the asset class?
Yeah, a couple things. What's holding storage back right now is a dramatic slowdown in home sales because 35% of home buyers and sellers in the U.S. use self-storage, and we're at 30-year lows for home sales. As rates go down, interest rates for single family, there's a enormous pent-up demand of buyers and sellers that are going to move, and that'll create great storage demand. It's just not here today because of the slow home sales. The other thing that I think is a massive tailwind is the incredible slowdown in new construction. And I just saw a stat that it's 70% off or 70% below the deliveries in the peak in like 22, 23. And, the Achilles heel of our business, what gets our business in trouble is oversupply. And so when you see that kind of like massive decrease, the risk of oversupply is much, much lower. And I think that's, you gotta have something open or under construction to capitalize on that. And, that's where it's a very contrarian mindset. You want to develop when other people are really struggling to get their arms around how to make it work.
Super there. One question that people address from a top-down perspective or approach would be, how should people analyze differently self-storage compared to, for instance, multifamily residential, hospitality, office space? What's different here?
Well, strictly on ground up development, the biggest difference is that it takes a long time to lease up. So we're building 3-story building, climate controlled, and has 800 units. That could take 2 to 3 years to lease up. versus an office building or an industrial, where you could be 100% leased the day you open if you've signed these pre-leases, or multifamily. As you're opening a pod, you're leasing it. So by the time you get down to construction, 70 or 80% of the building's already leased by the time you finish construction. So storage, we got to wait till the entire building's done, 100%. We do no pre-leasing, and it starts right there. And I think this appreciation that it is all of a 4-year investment, and you have to have the staying power financially to make sure you can get 4 years plus, because, something could go wrong and you need more time. Time solves almost every problem in self-storage, but you got to have the ability, or you got to have that time in order to solve it.
I agree with that statement. I mean, let's level deep on the due diligence process. Let's level deep on the competitive advantage and how you're building your asset management business. Data right now is super powerful, and asset managers can leverage on that to create competitive advantages, right? But how does technology affect, and how do you leverage on tech to outcompete or compete with other players out there with a bigger AUMs in the market?
Yeah. Real estate is just behind on using tech and data and AI. It's behind a lot of other industries. And I think self-storage is one of the laggers, even in the real estate industry. The way we use it is to make decisions quicker. And, it really is to say no to 10,000 deals and say yes to 5 of them, in the same time that somebody else can say no to 1,000 deals and say yes to 2. And, building our tools, our analysis, our data research, all these different bits is putting us in a position to say no quicker in order to get a chance to look at more opportunities.
Yeah. So, I mean, in other words, I would say speed of execution here is the key of how you are able to due diligence different investments in order to select the right ones and the ones that you're going to do the home run. Let's jump on to a topic that you mentioned before regarding the generational trends. So, consumer habits are changing across different generations, boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Z. Does this affect the asset class? And if so, why?
Yeah, and it's a reflection. The storage usage of younger generations is a reflection of the economy in the US, in that incomes have not kept up with the price of buying or renting a home. So, pre-pandemic, that income rent balance would afford a couple to rent a 2-bedroom. Now they can only afford to rent a 1-bedroom, but they have 2 bedrooms worth of stuff. So if the second bedroom costs $800 a month, the self-storage unit costs $150 a month. I mean, it's like renting a garage that you don't have the money to pay for on site, or buying a home with a 3-car garage, but you can't afford the 3-car garage. You can only afford the 2-car garage. So younger generations, from an affordability standpoint, can't necessarily get everything they want, can't afford everything they want, or they would rather live in the best location where it is more expensive, and then just use storage, not just to move or not just to remodel, but like a daily extension of their house where they're just using it more frequent. It's just part of how they live.
That's a great perspective of how you see it. I mean, indeed, you mentioned affordability is one of the biggest triggers something in that side that will continue to let's say put the asset class as a protagonist there in within the real estate as an asset class, because the trends are there. One, let's jump into the last question. Drew, you are a businessman yourself. What's the most important learning that you could share to someone aspiring to become a successful business leader?
Well, it's the same thing I share with my kids, or, the young people in our office. Like, you have to show up. You can't expect to find everything you're looking for on Google or ChatGPT. You can't expect to create relationships if you're not showing up. And whether that's a conference or a webinar, going to lunch with somebody, or reaching out through LinkedIn and creating contact, like, being successful in our business is relationships. So the the people that can interact and make other people like them and want to work with them are going to be even more important in a world where you have more young people staring at a phone or a computer screen. Like, get out there, interact. You've got to show up. That's how the relationships get created.
In other words, very simple, I would say soft skills compared to technical skills there. Thanks a lot for your time, Drew. It's been a pleasure to have here in the pod. I totally agree with the trend of self storage being an attractive asset class, following the trends that's coming in the next couple of years, and looking forward to speak again here as well. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, Leo. Great talk.